Hello, everyone. Welcome to our next session of Meet the Members. I'm VP of Biz Development and Partnerships at Empower Africa. And we're going to have one of these podcasts every Monday at 5 p.m. CAT, that's Central African time, although it's quite confusing in these few weeks with changing the clocks. But GMT +2 as well, Israel Daytime also, and all the other acronyms that we all know, but may get confused at sometimes when they're trying to set up international calls. Before I present our distinguished guest, for those of you who are joining us for the first time, Empower Africa is a business community with a mission to drive investment, trade, and job creation in Africa. We believe in trade over aid. We believe that business is the best way to build things and make a difference. The company has three verticals: the Empower Africa Business Network, events and trade missions, and consulting and project facilitation. We believe in bringing good people together and the power of synergy. Our business community is a trusted business community. We're invite-only and paid membership. We want to make sure that we have good, honest people that can continue adding value to each other. And our goal is really to create connections, optimize communication, and maximize the collaboration that can be done. The business community has, of course, startups, SMEs, entrepreneurs, investors, banks, PEs, VCs, family offices, governments, multinational enterprises, and so on, bringing good people together. It is my honor to present our guest today, Alex Taylor, Executive Director of the Center of African Studies at Harvard University. Welcome, Alex.
Thanks. Great to be here with you.
Wonderful. It's great to have you here. Last time we met in person was quite a while ago due to COVID and other
Far too
aspects.
long, yeah.
But yes, way too long. But I remember being in Boston in the freezing cold, a beautiful city, doing a number of different events that we had there. It was fantastic. And for those of you who don't know about the Center of African Studies at Harvard University, really an incredible institution, an organization that is doing tremendous work. Alex will share in a moment a little bit more, but really, if you are related in any shape or form to Harvard University, and to, of course, anything related to African studies, doing business in Africa, anything that we're mentioning here, driving investment, trade, and job creation in Africa, you should definitely be in touch and reach out to Alex and his wonderful team. Alex, please tell us a bit about yourself.
Great, thank you for that. So yeah, as you said, my name is Alex Taylor, the Executive Director at Harvard University's Center for African Studies. I've been a part of the Harvard community since I think about 2014, and at the Center for African Studies in particular since 2018. And the work we do there is really all about deepening knowledge and understanding of Africa through our global connections and our communities of learning on campus. We really look to broaden knowledge about Africa and bring African perspectives to bear on the scholarship of the Harvard community and beyond. I think traditionally a lot of people thought about African studies within the humanities or within anthropological studies, and that's still an important part of African studies and what we do at the center. But we are a university-wide center, which means that we have representation among our faculty affiliates and our students at all of the graduate and professional schools at the university as well. So we're thinking about how Africa fits in at the Harvard Divinity School, at the Harvard Business School, at the Harvard Gage Chan School of Public Health. And we're also designated as a National Resource Center by the U.S. Department of Education. And with that grant support, we have a mandate to get our studies and our knowledge and content about Africa out into a wider community beyond just the Harvard network.
Fantastic. By the way, I really loved the vision and mission, of the center.
Yeah, really, everything that we're doing at the center ties back to those global connections and communities of learning, and to making sure that they got inroads of knowledge across the university. We recognize that in an increasingly globalized world that we really are entering a century that is Africa's century, and that's not a quote just from myself. The provost of the university actually said the same exact thing upon the opening of our satellite office in Johannesburg in May of 2017. And so, really, what we look towards is making sure that across the university, our faculty, our students, that they have an understanding of where Africa is at today and where Africa is going into the future, and that we're a part of informing that global citizenry.
Yeah, I really think that one of the one of the other aspects of that we personally said Empower Africa as our mission is to really, the way we call it, enhance more positive awareness about Africa. And those that goes specifically to the concept of just, most of the people that I speak with in New York, London, Silicon Valley, wherever it is, many of them, again, educated, wonderful people, still view Africa as a country and not as a continent of the 54 countries, right? And that's something that we see time and time again, even just from the market perspective. In other words, we're looking at the African market for our product, and then just understanding, wait a second, the African market, right? You have 54 countries with completely different, stages of their economies, different target audiences, and so on. So yeah.
And I think that's why there's been such a great partnership between Empower Africa and the Center for African Studies. For the audience who may not be as familiar with our partnership, I think we first got connected in 2019 in the lead up to President Bio from Sierra Leone visiting Harvard. That was an event that the Center for African Studies organized with some of our partners on campus, including the Harvard Kennedy School of Government. And Empower Africa was instrumental to making that visit happen, in particular organizing a lot of the sideline activities during President Bio's visit. And I think that's a perfect example, right, where you may have a common perception. People, when you hear Sierra Leone, may have some knowledge about the country's past and some of the atrocities, or they may have pejorative terms like blood diamonds on their minds. But really, the Center for African Studies then can bring somebody like President Bio to campus, have him deliver a keynote lecture to a capacity crowd of 700 plus at the Kennedy School of Government at the JFK Forum, and really tell from firsthand experience what's happening in the country today. Where is the country at today? And as part of that visit, we also organized an academic forum where President Bio brought many of the senior cabinet members, his ministers, to speak with Harvard faculty about the economy, about health and healthcare delivery, about education in the country. So an opportunity to also deepen linkages between the government of Sierra Leone and some of the faculty experts at Harvard. And I think that's a great example of how working together, we can really work to change some of those perceptions about Africa.
100%. 100%. I also think that first of all, by the way, that was a great event, and issues at the sideline events and whatnot, but that was really incredible. I thought there was such an interesting mix of just, top-notch academia from Harvard University, government leaders, and the people who are actually in charge of the economic development of the country, right? Private sector, right? It's really actually one of the best mixes that we believe in at Empower Africa, trying to bring together also in our events as well. So you want to bring the private sector in, you want to bring the government, officials in, you want to bring in the academia, and you also want to bring in, of course, the nonprofits. There's so many incredible organizations that have been on the ground in different countries in Africa for centuries now that have so much knowledge and know-how. And it's really just a matter of connecting the dots and working together to enhance and there's so much thing.
Absolutely. No, that's something that's been very important for us as a center as well, is making sure that we have that policy relevance coming out of our work.
Yes. And could you share a little bit about, how you accomplished the work of the research in terms of funding for the students and the faculty? How does that work?
Yeah, so we have a number of opportunities that are available. Let me start with some of the student opportunities that are available. We really do want to incentivize and support students who are pursuing African studies in any discipline that they may be coming from, whether they're in public health, or they're in education, they're in government, whether they're studying African studies as a major, or whether they're looking to work African studies into a component of, say, their computer science degree. We want to expose them to African studies content and really encourage them to pursue opportunities that will give them a meaningful experience. So typically, pre-COVID, of course, we supported research and travel grants to the continent. So this was for both our undergraduate and graduate student population. During our summer term, which runs from June through August, or during what's referred to as the J term or January term, that sort of 3 or 4 week winter break period. We provided travel funding for students to go to Africa, either to pursue their own independent research projects. So perhaps they're working on a dissertation or a senior thesis project. And we also provided funding for internship opportunities. And we've partnered with a number of creative organizations for those, including Empower Africa. We've partnered with the Joe Spong Group in Ghana, which does water and sanitation management. We've partnered with the Marapula School in Abrone, Botswana for sort of an educational focused opportunity. Obviously, travel for students and faculty has been entirely disrupted by COVID. But in lieu of that, we've still been providing some financial support for students to pursue remote internship opportunities with organizations on the continent. And it's a great pairing. We have some financial resources available for them. The organizations that they want to work for and support in Africa may not have those resources available. So it's been a really great partnership to bring those together. And then on the faculty side of things, we recently reinaugurated our faculty grant funding program. So this is an opportunity that provides our faculty at Harvard with up to $10,000 of seed funding for research projects that are related to Africa. And again, any faculty, any discipline are eligible. We've recently funded work at the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health. We've funded work at the Graduate School of Design, at the Harvard Divinity School. We have a faculty member who's in Senegal right now doing a project on Islam in Africa. And then most recently, we inaugurated a newer opportunity that's referred to as the Motsepe Presidential Research Accelerator Fund for Africa. As the name would imply, this came at the generosity of the Motsepe Foundation in South Africa. And this one was particularly exciting for us for a couple of reasons. The first is the amount of funding available. We're able to provide up to $100,000 per year per faculty member under that grant opportunity. And it's also earmarked for projects that are innovative, that look at Africa and the challenges and opportunities that Africa faces today, and that have a STEM focus, so science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And again, that was really exciting for us as a center because we are meant to be multidisciplinary. And as important as the humanities are for us when we think about African studies, STEM is just as important. And so having a new grant opportunity for our faculty to pursue work in STEM was really exciting for us. We launched the inaugural call for applications for that last October with a November deadline, and we received an unprecedented number of applications for that, more than any other inaugural funding opportunity that Harvard had run. And the days of that were just recently announced a few weeks ago, and we funded faculty research looking at everything from COVID-19 in Africa to climate smart public health to language, culture, and technology. To understanding China's engagement in Africa. So quite a diversity of projects there.
Great. I'm having some technical issues for a minute, so just jumped. Okay, wonderful. And can you tell me a little bit more about you mentioned specifically the upcoming conference that you have?
Yeah. So actually, let me speak to one past conference and one upcoming conference. And the past conference I'll mention is also important because this was another one that was supported by Empower Africa. And that was one that we held this past October on women and the changing face of entrepreneurship in Africa. This was actually the first sort of large scale event that we were supposed to host in person in April of 2020. For obvious reasons, that had to be postponed. So it was the first major event that we sort of had to retool and move into a virtual environment. So sort of thinking, how do you take what was supposed to be 2 or 3 days of full, in-person meetings with breakout sessions and networking opportunities and distill that into a virtual format. And the topic for that, women and the changing face of entrepreneurship in Africa, we identified because we came across an interesting statistic in a 2018 London Stock Exchange Group report that noted that women-owned and operated businesses on the continent were generating more jobs than male-led businesses were. And that was particularly interesting to us because the scholarship, quite frankly, has not caught up to that. The scholarship as it stands today tends to observe women in the economy in Africa as operating in the informal sector, maybe selling goods at a market. And clearly when you see a statistic like that women owned and operated businesses are creating more jobs than their male-led counterparts, that's not just the informal economy, right? That's big and serious business happening. And so over the course of 2 days, we organized a few panels and a couple of keynote discussions that explored that a little deeper and in more detail. And what we discovered was that, of course, the networks are important. Where is it that women are getting support for these businesses, both formally and informally? What are the funding opportunities that are available to them? I think that was probably the sort of the biggest area that we saw that there were challenges, is that convincing some of the people in the finance space that these businesses needed to be invested in was one of the uphill challenges. But that conference was a great example where we wanted to bring together, not just the faculty, the research, the academic side of things, but we had the entrepreneurs themselves as part of the discussion. We had people in the finance space as part of the discussion. We had policy people as part of the discussion. Dr. Vera Songway, who heads up the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, delivered the keynote for that activity. I lead with that as a preview because I think it's a good example of where we as an institution at the Center for African Studies do try to bridge not just having that research and academic relevance, but also then having a real world policy relevance to the work we do. And that was such a great experience for us as well, because given that it was a virtual activity, we had anticipated that maybe we would have 300 people if we had hosted that activity in person in Cambridge, just given the capacity of spaces, the logistics of traveling to Cambridge and all. But by hosting that virtually, we had over 1,000 people across Zoom and Facebook live stream attend that event. And for the first time ever over the course of the past year, because we've moved everything virtual, we have a huge audience tuning in from across the continent. So they're both able to benefit from the work and the content we're putting out, but then also give us feedback to make sure that we're getting it right, that we're exploring the right issues and taking the right understanding. Later this week on the 21st and 22nd, we'll be taking that same format, that 2 half-day virtual conference, and hosting a conference on Africa's water opportunity, science, sustainability, and solutions. And this is part of our climate change, agriculture, and health initiative at the center. We formed that initiative because, we recognize the linkages between those themes, right? A changing climate is going to have an adverse impact on crop yields, potentially on crop quality. That results in reduced availability of food, perhaps poor nutritional quality. And then that lack of nutritious food puts a population at greater risk for communicable and non-communicable diseases. So there's real healthcare impacts. And so under that theme, we decided this year to look at water as sort of a central unifier or linking theme. And so on the 21st and 22nd, we're going to host this 2-day conference. For those that are interested, you can go to africa.harvard.edu and register. This is a virtual event, free and open to the public. Over the course of the 2 days, we're going to organize a couple of panel discussions. One is going to look at water and health, including sanitation and hygiene. Another panel will look at the question of water, climate, and agriculture. So some of those issues that I talked about with a changing climate and levels of precipitation, and how that will affect the climate and agriculture in Africa. We'll organize a panel on water, migration, and human rights. So this question about how flooding can, of course, induce migration, drought can induce migration. Water itself on the Mediterranean passage can complicate and make for a dangerous passage of migration. And then we'll conclude with a panel on Africa's water opportunity, really taking a holistic look at water, linking all of those themes, and thinking about a way to synthesize a solutions-oriented recommendation for ways forward and for policy outcomes. We'll also have 2 keynote addresses as part of that discussion. We've got Dr. Apollos Nwafor from the Alliance for a Green Revolution in Africa, who will speak to policy actions for driving economic growth. And we've got Dr. Martin Vergine from the African Development Bank Group, who's going to speak to a rights-based approach to development for water in Africa.
Wow. Well, clearly rock stars, which is always great.
Yeah, we do like to get a good discussion going.
I also think that it's very, it's extremely interesting to see what can be done when you think about really bringing all the greatest minds together, and I think that, Harvard University, of course, is a perfect example for that. By the way, what's going on now? On campus, is school back, or did they say that they're going to go back?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're not quite back yet, but all of the sort of building blocks are being put in place for that. We've been informed that August 2nd is the next major date to look forward to, at which point the university is going to allow most of the faculty and support staff to return to campus. Obviously, we'll still be wrestling with some restrictions, social distancing, mask wearing, and the like. But the operational plan going to our fall semester, which begins in September, is that we're welcoming all students back to campus. Teaching will be in person. Still awaiting what the guidance will be for some of the activities that a center like ours does, some of the larger, gatherings that we have on campus, some of these conferences. It's possible that we may need to continue conducting those virtually for some period of time. And quite frankly, as a center, we're thinking about virtual programming in the long term. We certainly value doing things in person, right? We love seeing each other. We love having meals with each other. There's a lot that you can get out of an in-person discussion that we obviously all miss in the virtual environment. It's an imperfect substitute. But the big advantage of being in this virtual world, as I said earlier, is having a much wider audience. We've been able to have an audience across the United States, in Europe, in Africa, and elsewhere, and even getting participants. One of the activities that we launched last year in partnership with the Africa Centers for Disease Control was a weekly webinar series on COVID-19 in Africa, and we ran that through most of 2020. And each week we looked at how COVID-19 was impacting the continent, but through a different lens, because this wasn't just, of course, a healthcare pandemic, right? This had economic consequences, food security consequences, educational consequences. And so each week we organized a 1-hour panel discussion through those different themes or lenses. And one of the other advantages was who could participate in those panels. Normally when we host an activity on campus, we've got to, not just identify our speakers, but, coordinate schedules, invite you to Cambridge. It takes a day or two to travel here, a day or two to travel back. You want to spend some time on campus once you're here, versus just asking somebody, hey, can I have an hour of your time next Wednesday for this panel discussion? So it's given us an opportunity as a center, not just to reach a wider audience, but also to engage a wider range of panelists in our programming who, are on the continent, are on the ground, are directly able to speak to some of the issues that we want to hear about.
That's great. That's great. Very exciting. A lot of exciting things. So, before we come to a close and move on to also our tradition of ending with a certain quote or, concept or idea that we always ask our hosts to share with us, is there anything else you'd like to share and discuss?
Yeah, the other thing that I'll mention, just to share a little bit more about the center's work, are some of the fellowship programs that we offer, because I think those are really important as well to understanding the work that we do as a center. Part of what's important is that we have a two-way exchange of traffic that's happening, right? It's not just about us sending students and faculty, to Africa, for instance, for their research projects. But it's also about who we bring to Harvard then to inform the community. And so we have two programs to that effect. One is the Harvard South Africa Fellowship Program, or HSAFP as we call it. HSAFP has been around since 1979, and it's an opportunity for mid-career professionals in South Africa to pursue up to 1 year of graduate study at Harvard University, fully funded. They receive both a living stipend and a tuition waiver. We've had well over 200 graduates of that program now who have gone on to some really senior roles in South Africa, the Constitutional Court, the Human Rights Commission, serving as deans or vice chancellors at various universities. And so that's one program that's ongoing, with the next application deadline coming due April 30th. And the second program that we offer as a center is our postdoctoral research fellowship program. And so this is an opportunity for newly minted PhDs who are pursuing academic career tracks or academic positions on the continent to have an 18-month association with the Harvard Center for African Studies. And 6 of that 18 months is actually spent in residence in Cambridge, working under the direction of a Harvard faculty mentor in a research laboratory or in a department, depending upon what their research interests are. And so it's really important to us that we see that Harvard's not just sort of having a benefit for Harvard in sending our students, our faculty to the continent, but that we also have pathways for African academics, policymakers, artists to come to Harvard and participate in meaningful academic experiences as well. The other thing I should mention before we close, of course, is our Africa office, which is based in Johannesburg, South Africa. We opened the Africa office in May of 2017. Real as our eyes and ears on the continent. We do deliberately refer to it as the Africa office as opposed to the Johannesburg office, because it does have a continental-wide mandate. And so the office there is responsible for running some of those fellowship programs that I mentioned, for engaging with our alumni networks throughout the continent, and for making sure that our programming has policy relevance on the continent.
Fantastic. That's great, Alex. Thank you so much. So, and now to the closing. Could you please share with us a quote, an idea, a concept that you like, that inspires you?
Yeah, the one that's sticking in my mind most this week is former UN Secretary General Kofi Annan. He declared, I think it was in maybe 2000 or 2001, that access to safe water is a fundamental human need and therefore a basic human right. And I chose that quote for a couple of reasons. One, of course, is as I mentioned, we do have this conference on water coming up on the 21st and 22nd, which also aligns quite nicely with April 22nd being International Earth Day. But I think what I like about a statement like that is it really is powerful when the world's leaders, and in this case Africa's leaders, can quite simply and succinctly identify a human right. Because I think sometimes those things get lost, and when you simply and declaratively make that statement, I think that brings a lot of power behind it. And so that's the quote that I think is most in my mind as I start this work week.
Beautiful. I love it. Thank you so much, Alex Taylor. Thank you for joining us for this podcast.
Thank you for having me.
It was great seeing you. And I look forward to soon, seeing you in person with God's help.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm fully vaccinated
and,
now, and here's hoping that the rest of the world will be sooner rather than later.
Awesome. All right, stay safe and healthy, man. Good to see you.
Take care. Great seeing you as well.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks.